The ultimate New Orleans Saints 2025 preview, ladies and gentlemen. All right, check the mic, 33rd team. I cannot wait for this video. Every once in a while, a video rolls on the feed, rolls across the news desk, and it actually makes me excited to watch. This is one of those videos. The last time we saw these hombres right here, the last time we saw them, they were talking about the Saints being the worst team. They were talking about the Saints having an F offseason grade. They were talking about, well, the Saints should have taken Shedeur Sanders, even though we know he wasn't going until the 5th round. And I'm not going to lie to anybody, that video pissed me off. Gave me high blood pressure. I had to go to Walgreens, okay, get high blood pressure medicine, okay? But here we are again. And I have a sneaky feeling, a premonition, some would say. Because remember the prediction. Prediction, tomato. The prediction is that all these channels, all these people who've been saying the Saints are the worst team in the NFL, 32 out of 32, relegate them, put them in the SEC, whatever. Once training camp starts, once preseason starts, and they start putting actual data to the names and whatever, they're going to walk it back. And they're going to say, well, actually, this team's not too bad. Well, wait a minute. I know we said they're an aging core 3 weeks ago, but I've done the math. I got the abacus out. I actually did do the math. Do y'all want to guess what the average age of the starters of the New Orleans Saints is? I did the math this morning. 26. That's the average age of offense and defense. All the starters, okay? Counting Demario Davis. All the starters, both sides of the ball, and Blake Grupe, average out to 26. It's like 26.2. That would put the Saints as like the 7th youngest team in the NFL. Unbelievable. All right, let's get to the video.
Start with the New Orleans Saints, 5-12 last year. A team with, I would say, as many question marks as any other team. Are they slightly in transition right now? Are they just getting out of all the cap mess? You have this offseason retirement of Derek Carr. After they signed Derek Carr a couple of years ago, that signified, hey, we're going to keep trying to compete and going for it. We're not ready to blow it up and restart. But Derek Carr retiring this offseason, I think, has a bit of an impact. They draft Tyler Shough in the 2nd round, number 40 overall. And so he's expected to be the starter here. And they've got one of, if not the lowest win total here, 5.5. I think tied with the Titans for last, over under 5.5 here for the Saints.
Yeah, so back in that, I mean, the win total is set low when there are question marks at quarterback. And the Saints, not only do they have a question mark at quarterback, but they have question marks in a lot of other places as well. I think they tried to go the competitive rebuild route. They also, I think, have done a reasonable job of changing course in terms of how they approach the salary cap without trying to do it all in one offseason. Like, let's take all the dead money today and then just be in hell for the next year and then just take all the medicine at once. They've tried to sort of do that step by step. I think that's a work in progress as well. And so you end up with this team, and they haven't drafted tremendously well for a while, having had, a draft or two of spectacular picks a number of years ago. And so they're left in this spot of, you don't really have a quarterback. The guys that you have that are like really good players are aging and maybe not what they used to be.
Whom? Because the only player that's aging or your really good player, whatever, is Kamara. But wouldn't it be crazy to hear that same kind of phrasing about Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers or Derrick Henry and the Ravens and say, well, this guy, this is an old player. People aren't saying that about Christian McCaffrey. People are saying he might win the MVP this year.
Alvin Kamara, Brandon Cooks, guys like that with some serious pedigree. Demario Davis is still playing at a really good level, but probably is on the downswing now. And you've let go of a lot of players. And it's like, have you replaced them with enough? Like, is Carl Granderson enough to offset the decline of Cameron Jordan? And
What? This is something else that blows my mind. Cam Jordan has not, people act like Chase Young and Carl Granderson are new. Chase Young was here last year. Carl Granderson has been here. Carl Granderson is one of the most undervalued pass rushers in the NFL. Cam Jordan has not been a tried and true starter who we are relying on off the edge in years now. Brandon Cooks is our third receiver. Like, people name the old players, and they're like, I mean, Brandon Cooks is kind of taking a step, on the downhill. Yeah, I know. He's been here for 2 months, and he's our third receiver. What about 25-year-old Chris Olave and 25-year-old Rashid Shaheed? All right? Like the Cam Jordan thing. Newsflash. We're not concerned about it. It blows my mind.
Some of these other players that have left. Is Kool-Aid McKinstry able to step in and be the new Marshawn Lattimore? Is Chris Olave able to go long enough without getting concussed again that you can rely on him as the number one guy? Like, there's a lot of questions now with this team.
Kellen Moore also in as head coach, and we spend so much time in the offseason looking again at position groups and strengths and weaknesses and everything, and then the season hits, and we know anything can happen week to week. Remember the first 2 weeks of the season? What happened? The Saints were the best team in the NFL. Just saying, like, this wasn't that long ago, Sam.
Yeah.
And I was down on the Saints going into last year. I was rethinking my life, my life choices here. Week 2, I was like, man, I thought the Saints were going to be awful on both lines of scrimmage. I thought they were going to just be terrible. And then they destroyed the Panthers, and it was like, all right, it's the Panthers, fine.
Right.
And then they destroyed the Cowboys. The same way.
44-19.
The same way, right? With the same.
On the road, went to Dallas. Now, remember, Carolina Panthers, everybody says is going to be really good this year. What's going on?
Same, like, dominant offensive line, and Taysom Hill, year 7 of this experiment was unstoppable. That was last season, Sam.
The Cowboys, it's so funny the way, like, how fast perception changes in the NFL. Like, at the time, this was the Cowboys coming off 3 straight 12-win seasons, who were expected still to be one of the better teams in the NFL. And it's like they got annihilated week 2 by the Saints. And
not only did they get annihilated, but Micah Parsons was a total non-factor.
We're saying, which thing that we believed heading into the season is not true? Like, is it that the Saints are actually a contending team? Is it that Dallas is a disaster? Like, what is the new variable that we're missing here?
Tyrann Mathieu also retired.
Let me go back. That Eagles game, Eric McCoy gets hurt. Injuries are a huge problem. We all know that. Offensive line falls apart. Until that Dallas Goedert catch, the Saints had like a 98% chance to win the game. So even with the injuries, even though the Saints didn't play well in the Eagles game, Eagles were Super Bowl champions, the Saints still should have won that game. And it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But think about how different last year would have been. Imagine the Saints 3-0 beat Carolina, Dallas, and Philadelphia. Imagine the narrative then.
A couple weeks ago as well for the Saints. So you're.
And now and this is like one of the big like philosophical things we've been talking about this offseason. The Saints were not last year a legitimate Super Bowl threat. I'm not saying that, but you can look at last year with a way worse head coach, right? You can look at all that. You can look at the pieces that were on the field. You can look at the team this year, and you can see how it doesn't make sense to throw them down to 32. It doesn't make sense to throw them down as the worst team far and away in the NFL because there is talent there. There was talent there last year. All hell broke loose. People got injured. Coaches got fired, whatever. But just pure talent, pure position group by position group, pure player by player, the team is not bad and has gotten better this year. Has gotten better with the additions of Kelvin Banks, Danny Sussman, Quincy Riley, Jonas Sanker. Has gotten better with the acquisition of Justin Reed. Has gotten better with Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley.
You're losing some veteran presence. And look, I think it's a rebuilding season for the Saints. I thought that was true last year. I looked like an idiot through 2 weeks, and then by the end of the season, it was like, all right, yeah, they did not have enough.
Week 3, they ran the Eagles close, too.
Oh, yeah, they were close. It was the Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley had a couple explosives late that completely changed everything.
What about Washington? All hell broke loose. Team was absolutely destroyed. Spencer Rattler was the only player on the field, and they lose because of a failed 2-point conversion against Washington.
But yeah, the Saints.
But see, his line of thinking, too, is wrong. His line of thinking of, well, I thought they were going to suck. I was wrong, but then I was right. It's like, well, no. Unless you predicted all the injuries and all that, you were not right. The result, like, that's another way of, like, using the results to validate an incorrect line of thinking.
So I think they're in a rebuild. But I think there's a couple position groups moving back in the right direction. Offensive line, where they've drafted a tackle each of the last 2 years. Kelvin Banks Jr. this year, Taliese Fuaga last year. Fuaga moves back to right tackle, where he played in college. You get the same dynamic that you have with the Titans. So that looks like it's a young tackle duo that could be pretty good. Eric McCoy coming back off of injury. That was a big loss last year. They're going to try to get something out of Trevor Penning at guard this year before they have to potentially let him go or re-sign him if he's legit. So I think the offensive line's moving in the right direction. Pass catcher-wise, hopefully Chris Olave can stay healthy with all the concussion injuries because he looks great, concussion issues. And Brandon Cooks at the tail end of his career, but like if you just get dependable wide receiver 2 type of player from Brandon Cooks and then the deep threat of Rashid Shaheed, I think the goal here is to just put this infrastructure in place that you could see what you have in Tyler Shough so that a year from now you know if you need to draft someone else.
Yeah, if everybody stays healthy, I think the offense should be a pretty good situation for either Tyler Shough or Spencer Rattler if Shough isn't ready to take that job. But that is a bigger if for the Saints than other teams, Y'all
know how I feel about injuries. Like, you really can't put a lot of stock in them either way because it's just the ultimate variable. So you got to kind of just let that all just play out and be what it is. But on the field, the roster we are looking at, offensively and defensively, not that bad. Yeah, there are some ifs, for sure. But the same thing we've said for 3 straight months. It is insane to look at that team and look at the Browns or even the Panthers or whatever, the Titans, whatever team you want to pick. It is insane to lump them into the same group.
Again, you can always play the game of, well, what if this guy gets hurt? But with Olave's history now, with Shaheed coming back off an injury, with Brandon Cook's age and history, I think you can more reasonably raise that as a concern for this team relative to some other sides. But Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, Kendry Miller, Devin Neal, who they drafted. This Foster Moreau's not a bad player. Like, it's a group that could be pretty good if they have solid quarterback play. The offensive line, I think, should be passable, if not great.
Passable, if not great. So, just listen to where we're at. He's just laid it out there. The offense is going to be pretty good, and the offensive line could be great. Does that sound like the 32nd team to you, ladies and gentlemen?
It's not a terrible spot for a quarterback to go into.
Alvin Kamara can still play at running back. We'll see how much they want to try to get the youth movement going, Kendry Miller or Devin Neal out of Kansas at this point this year. But Kamara is still pretty decent there. Overall, you would still say on paper the offense looks like it's the bottom, close to the bottom of the league because of the uncertainty at quarterback. But even if you put Derek Carr in there, you would say the offensive line looks okay, some youth there, and there's more questions at receiver than you would like, especially for the future. So that's what the Saints should be looking for here is, who are we building around for the future this year?
Look, like this is the part. This whole injury uncertainty, like that being the big caveat, you can look at teams all across the league. Look at the San Francisco 49ers right now. How do you think the 49ers are going to do next year?
So you think Wick.
Are you talking to me? What's going on here? The 49ers have Christian McCaffrey, who is off a serious leg injury, not just like a sprain. Like, hey, they had to send him to Germany to look at their specialists. Brandon Ayuk is not even going to be ready for the season opener. Okay. The Rams, Matthew Stafford has vertebrae issues. He's seen a back specialist in the last 2 weeks. a 37-year-old with back issues entering the season playing quarterback. Not exactly awesome. Okay? You can look at all kind of teams and say, well, there's some injury issues there. Well, there's some current concerns there. But it's impossible to truly try and forecast a team if you're looking at the 49ers, for example, and say, well, if they stay healthy, they're a Super Bowl team, but Brandon Ayuk's hurt, Christian McCaffrey's hurt, so I guess I have them winning 5 games. It's like, well, wait a minute. That's very difficult. That's a crazy way to look at a season. Same with the Rams. Well, I think the Rams could win the NFC, but Matthew Stafford has a bad back, so I have him at 6 wins. It's like, well, damn, okay. So you got to kind of take the injury things and throw it out, because if the injuries happen, it's all washed anyways.
It really, getting an answer at quarterback, effectively.
That's the biggest thing.
Do we have something in Tyler Shough, or do we immediately need to pivot?
It could be a decent infrastructure, like I said, but nobody's ranking this offensive supporting cast as one of the better ones in the league.
Yeah, but at least it's not a situation where you're looking at it and saying, we don't even know what we're going to get out of Tyler Shough because this is not a viable situation. Like, this is not a workable spot for him.
Defensively, I think if
you can kind of feel them talking themselves into what I'm saying, because he's trying to say, well, this team's not one you'd rank very highly. But then Sam is saying, well, the infrastructure is kind of all right there. Like, this could be a good to decent playmaking group, good to great offensive line. And then Steve comes back with, well, yeah, but they're kind of bottom of the barrel. Am I right? And he's like, well, not really.
Dennis Allen did such a good job as a defensive coordinator there for years. He's out. But if you were to, say what made the Saints special defensively for a period of time, it was their depth on the defensive line. Remember when Trey Hendrickson was their third rusher for a while, when they had Cameron Jordan, they had Marcus Davenport, they had Hendrickson, they had David Onyemata, Carl Granderson was just starting to hit the ground running, and now he's the star there, really, next to Chase Young. They just were unable to replenish the depth despite trying.
What was great about the Saints and their defense in that 2018, 20 whatever era was that you couldn't run the football on them. You could not run the football on them. They were suffocating on the interior defensive line. You just were not running the ball on that team.
With Peyton Turner in the first round, Brian Brzee in the first round, Isaiah Foskey in the second round. I don't think any of those guys, despite Brzee's sack totals being pretty decent, I don't think any of those guys has really lived up to what they've wanted there. And so that's still a big question mark for me up front. Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed. So let's change that. Hit that subscribe button. And now let's get back to the action.
Yeah, they've missed on a lot of draft picks that would have helped this transition on defense. The other thing, you mentioned Dennis Allen no longer being there. The replacement for Dennis Allen is Brandon Staley. This is a fascinating coaching hire because we are a few years removed from Brandon Staley being, number one, the hottest sort of head coaching ticket in the NFL, but also running the number one defense in the NFL, running a variant of the Vic Fangio defense, which just annihilated Kansas City in the Super Bowl and is still, one of two sort of variants of scheme that's throughout the NFL as a very popular defensive system. He was hired for the Chargers off the back of that, running an amazing defense, being a dominant force. He can finally get the most out of this talent that the Chargers have got on defense. And then not only was he not able to do that, but he ran one of the worst defenses in the NFL with the Chargers. So, what the hell are you going to get with Brandon Staley as your defensive coordinator? Is he going to go back to running what is still a system that...
he kind of pulled the Dennis Allen. Staley, we'll see what happens, but great DC, head coach, didn't work out. And, you can look at Allen's defense last year, right, where it's like, man, what is this? What's going on here? Big play after big play, can't sack the quarterback, 7 yards a carry on the run. Same thing with Brandon Staley, where all of a sudden it's like, well, what's going on? How is this defense so bad? It might just be one of those things where the DC becomes a head coach and it's just too much, goes back to being a DC. Would it surprise me if the Bears' defense was good this year with Dennis Allen? No. It would not surprise me if the Saints' defense was good with Brandon Staley, because sometimes coordinators are coordinators.
Can be as good as anything. We've seen that with Vic Fangio in Philadelphia last year, but obviously it needs some talent and it needs the horses to do that. Or was the Rams thing just a mirage? Like, was he never that guy? and actually he's not going to move this forward at all.
And we've seen this from a lot of people around the league. A lot of people are just better at coordinating than they are head coaching.
And obviously those two, Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley, they have a connection. It's not like they...
Well, they flip-flopped, right? Staley was head coach and Moore was his offensive coordinator for a year.
But they work together is my point.
They were, yes.
Kellen Moore theoretically should know what he's bringing to the table.
But also, and no one's really talking about this besides me, don't you think it's interesting that Kellen Moore last year saw the success of Vic Fangio's defense, and by the success I mean a Super Bowl, and when building out his staff, he said, well, what's the closest thing to Fangio I can get? And lo and behold, they work together in Los Angeles, but Brandon Staley is a legitimate, he probably is the Vic Fangio disciple. That's how he got his start in the NFL, was with Vic Fangio. He was following around Fangio. He was a linebackers coach with Fangio. He is as close to that system as you can get. So remove the Chargers, how Staley was the head coach, Kellen was the OC for 1 year when Herbert got hurt. If you remove that connection, the connection that you should be talking about is that Moore is trying to replicate what Philadelphia had in Fangio.
Staley is a special coordinator, and he just happened to be, over his head as a first-time head coach, and the whole game management, the motivation, everything he had to deal with, and he's just a wonderkin defensive coordinator. Then that changes the fortunes of the Saints here. Yeah. Despite no matter what we're looking at from a depth chart perspective.
But it does make you wonder why he wasn't able to improve the defense at all in Los Angeles.
Because you just don't have your hands on it as much. You just have too much.
I mean, other coaches where they're like specialists on one side of the ball and they end up in over their head as head coach and they don't work out. Generally speaking, their side of the ball is still better than it is without them.
I mean, sometimes it depends. I mean, last year, I know Dennis Allen had, a run there, but Dennis Allen, the last couple of years, you can look at that tenure. It's like, well, the Saints defense kind of did slip, and it probably is because you just aren't as involved in that side of the ball.
Robert Saleh, the defense was great under Saleh. I don't think he even did a particularly bad job. He ended up carrying the can for things that went wrong, but Robert Saleh's defense was not a problem in New York. Other guys are there, and even when they don't work out, their side of the ball still generally functions when they're good.
I mean, Arthur Smith,
No, I get it. Just doesn't always work out that way.
I mean, that's not totally true.
Why? So we'll see. If Staley's special, that changes their fortunes. I think Carl Granderson is good. Chase Young is still solid on the edge. I don't love the defensive tackles. Brzee, as I've said many times on the show, he really struggles in the run game, gets moved off the ball quite a bit. Devon Gottschalk, kind of similar. So I think they've got some questions, and there's more pressure on those defensive tackles, I think, in that system where they're trying to play the run with
There's more pressure on Gottschalk for sure. Gottschalk's going to be asked to be the plug in the middle there. Brzee's going to be pushed a little bit more out. I mean, just inherently how the 3-4 works. Brzee is going to be pushed a little bit more out to where he is going to be doing what he specializes in, which is rushing the passer. Now, can Gottschalk be that plug in the middle? That's the question, because if he cannot, and the Saints do not have a plug in the middle, all of a sudden, the 3-4, you have to have someone in the middle, whoever it ends up being, who can play the run.
Fewer bodies, so I don't know if they just have the right personnel for that just yet.
I mean, this is a personnel group that's set up to replicate exactly what the Chargers defense was for years.
It's true.
Soft as hell up the middle. Going to give up 6.4 yards per attempt.
That's why Staley's defense weren't great there. Demario Davis is another modern marvel, though, where he was better on the back half of his career than the early half, and not just better, but special for the last 6 or 7 years for the Saints. Justin Reed comes in at safety, a mix of him and, guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry in year two. I think the cornerback room, on paper, one of the worst in the NFL as far as question marks go. We'll see if McKinstry could hold down that top spot as a second rounder last year.
What a kicking competition in training camp.
Talk about
the Saints now have. Well, you've got their actual kicker. Then you've got Irishman Charlie Smith.
Well, this isn't a competition at all. Blake Grupe is the kicker. Charlie Smith, Big Chuck Smith is not vying for the kicking job.
Smith, who they signed last year off the IPP, but unfortunately signed for the one team that just has a fantastic kicker and was therefore never likely to get the starting job going forward. And now you just add safety Justin Reed to the situation.
Justin
who can
Reed,
kick off as well.
Understood.
So what a kicking battle this is.
Just lost everybody with that. But I see the joke there. Justin
Everybody
Reed,
loves it.
special. Saints, over-unders 5.5. A lot of people expecting them to be in the top overall pick market. Yeah. I think that's going to be tough in the South.
To win the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, I think it'll be tough for the Saints to be there. I wonder how many times the team that's the favorite going in to get the number 1 overall pick actually does it. The 2019 Dolphins, they looked like, an SEC team trying to play in the NFL, and they were, still didn't even get it.
The problem is, I think it's quite difficult now to win 0 or 1 game. Like, I think even the terrible teams tend to find 2 or 3 wins, and that means that any game late in the year.
Now this right here is the part where the math doesn't math. So we just spent 13 minutes of this video talking about a good playmaking group, a good to great offensive line, great, fantastic wonder kid defensive coordinator, good head coach. We're talking about good edge rusher in Carl Granderson, Chase Young, Justin Reed, fantastic kicker. We're hearing all this stuff, and now we get transported to first overall pick talk. This is what I think the problem is now, is that the copy and paste for so long was Saints are 32. The worst team, no doubt about it, no questions asked. And now that people are doing their final kind of previews, now that we're a week, the first week of preseason, now their anchor, so we'll get in a little data here, but like their anchor point was so bad that now they're having a hard time moving that anchor point. And my whole argument this entire time has been the anchor point should have never been as bad as they had the Saints. It should have never been 32. It should have been 26-ish, 27th, whatever. And then you can move the anchor to, well, okay, maybe they're not 27th. Maybe they're closer to 21. Maybe they're closer to 22, whatever. But now people are having a hard time going, well, for the last 2-3 months, I've had the anchor at 32. I can't throw them up all the way to 21 now. And so you get these videos where it's 13 minutes of, well, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. Young talent here, young coaches here. Okay, we're looking all right. But then what do you do? How do you sum it up? How do you end the video?
Can completely change the top of the draft, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. Like every time you think a team's got, the Patriots, whoever, like these teams take themselves out of the number 1 overall pick with a stupid win in Week 18 all the time. So I think that's the problem. Like I would be shocked, I think, if the Saints were not picking in the top 3. But the difference between 1 and 3 could be a random game that somebody wins in Week 18.
And Tyler Shough probably has to be special for them to not be considering one of the top quarterbacks next year, where, we know what happens a year early. The quarterback class, there could be 2 first-rounders, there could be 5 or 6 with some of the names. But I think Saints fans should at least be watching a lot of college football and keeping an eye on the next quarterback class.
I think we've talked about this before, but do you think Arch Manning is more or less inclined to come out next year if New Orleans is picking at the top of the draft?
I think more.
New Orleans.
So I don't know if y'all saw, but Archie came out and said, yeah, Arch is absolutely staying at Texas next year. He will play through 2026, which we've said a million times. But now Archie is saying it, of like, hey, go ahead and take him off the mock drafts. He's not coming out of the draft.
Of course, for anyone that doesn't know, Archie Manning, Arch Manning's grandfather?
Just grandfather, not great.
Right.
Grandfather, yeah.
How far back did he? Anyway, grandfather was, Saints legend type of, player.
I think
the start of the dynasty. That's where they are. They're New Orleans royalty.
No, I think more likely.
Because I'm generally, my opinion at the moment is I think Arch Manning is very, very likely to stay in college, almost regardless.
Yeah.
I do wonder, though, if that changes if the Saints are number 1 and interested in him.
It also depends how if Texas wins the national title.
Or if he stinks next year.
True. But if he's the QB for the national title team and the Saints have the number 1 overall pick, it's all right, see you later. But you also have Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. You've got that other local connection.
Was it Feinbaum, is that his name? Is out there being like, he's going to be the best quarterback in college football history. Like, the dude, has he even played well yet at any point? I mean, this is.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, they're almost talking themselves into the right line of thinking, and then they just kind of revert back. Like he just said, has he even played well at all? Well, brother, y'all, I don't know if you were blacked out for a second, but y'all were just talking about him going to the Saints first overall. And then you answer your own question with, wait a minute, has he actually been good? What's going on here?
This is all theoretical
Are you
at the moment.
questioning Paul's ability to construct a hot take?
Yes. Well, no, not his ability to construct a hot take. His ability to construct an accurate take at the moment.
All right, over under 5.5 here for the Saints. Where are you going?
Under.
I'll also take the under for the Saints again.
Thanks for watching.
I mean, I really am stuck in a rock and a hard place here, because all I'm advocating for is that the Saints are closer to average than they are the worst team in the NFL. I have had the Saints at 6-11. Okay? That's where I've had them. I don't have them winning the South. I don't have them making the playoffs. None of that stuff. Just 6 wins. But 6 wins is so far away from the worst team in the NFL. To be the runaway worst team. To be, guys, last year, the Saints weren't the worst team. If the Saints are just what they were last year, they're not the worst team. And how in the hell can they be as bad as they were last year? Are you telling me that 20 players are going to get injured again? Are you telling me that we're going to miss? Remember the injury chart we showed. They missed 83 games from offensive starters. No other team in the NFL even missed 70. That's how far and away they were the most injured offensively. You're telling me that's going to repeat? So if it doesn't repeat, which mathematically it should not, if it doesn't repeat, how can this team be worse than last year? I don't understand it. And like, what would surprise me the most out of everything that could happen this year, what would surprise me the most is if the Saints are the worst team in the NFL. I am more confident that they win 10 games than that they're the worst team in the NFL. I do not see how that happens. I do not see how this team can take that big of a step back. I mean, they picked 9th. Like, think about that. They picked behind the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers picked higher than them. Okay? Like, the Raiders. The Saints didn't pick 2nd overall last year. They picked 9th. So now, a team that was as bad as they were last year who picked 9th is now they're getting a new head coach, a new DC, by way of also a new OC, since he's Kellen Moore, a new left tackle, a new left guard, a new right tackle, a new center, a new quarterback, a new wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, a new safety, defensive back, like all the stuff they're getting, new linebacker, all the stuff they're getting, all the upgrades from the injured player to our starters, like the Eric McCoy situation, like the Chris Olave situation, like the Rashid Shaheed situation. All this good that's happening. And they're going to take this monumental step back to being the worst team in the NFL. 1 win, 2 win, 3 win. I just don't see it. It just doesn't line up. It does not add up. The only way they can take that much of a step back. I mean, we looked at everything, like the DVOA. All right, this is the DVOA from last year, okay? Remember, DVOA weights average on a play basis, so whatever. It's factoring in all the injuries and all that stuff. Offensive DVOA, the Saints were 29th, okay? The defensive DVOA, the Saints were... I mean, they're not even, let's see. Defensively, they were 27th, all right? And those numbers aren't good, and they shouldn't be good. It was practice squad players. It was free agents, undrafted free agents. It was people who were just off the street. And look at the teams that were worse defensively. Carolina, Jacksonville, Atlanta, New England, Chicago. Okay? Like, teams get better. Teams improve. And if any team should improve, if any team should get better, it's the Saints. Almost all of these players that are impacting these stats, almost all of them are not on the team anymore. Almost all. The entire wide receiver group, the running back room, the offensive line, the whole thing, the defensive scheme, the coaches, all of it. This is the offensive DVOA. Cleveland 32, Tennessee 31, New York 30. You look at Tennessee, would it surprise me if Tennessee was better than 31? No. Why? Because this is removing Will Levis and adding Cam Ward. Like, there's upgrades that are being made. The Saints team total DVOA was, was 22. 22. So last year, as bad as the numbers I just showed you were, they were somewhere in the low 20s. 22. Somewhere in there. This is where they ranked. With as bad as what was going on. And if you look at this and flip it, it's basically the draft order, right? Flip this upside down. It's pretty close. You got Cleveland, Tennessee, Carolina, New England, the Giants, the Raiders, the Jaguars, Chicago, Dallas, Jets, Saints, Miami, Atlanta, Indy, so on and so forth. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're off by like 1. Like, a lot of these are off by 1. Like Cleveland, like Tennessee was 1, not 2. New England was 3, not 4. The Raiders are where they were. Jacksonville was 5, right? The Saints were 9. Like, Chicago was 10. Some of these are like flip-flop by a couple points, but it shows you it played out pretty similar to this, right? Played out right there. Carolina, 5 and 12. Like, think about the narrative behind Carolina. Carolina was 5 and 12 last year. Carolina is 30th, all right? 30th overall, 5 and 12. Drafted ahead of the Saints. Carolina is, or was, 24 offensively and 32 defensively. Okay, so 30th overall, whatever I said offensively, 32 defensively, 5 and 12, worse than the Saints last year. And what is the narrative around Carolina this year? Right now, what's the narrative? Their narrative is, well, young players. Well, Bryce Young's taking a step. Well, this team's getting, this team could be an upset team. This team could be an NFC South, dark horse. Why? They're bringing back the same defensive coordinator. How insane is that? Worst defense in the NFL, DVOA, ranked 32. Only team in the NFL to give up 500 or more points. And they're bringing back the DC. They have the same quarterback, the same coach. Why, right? A lot of the same reasons that people are giving the Panthers for a step forward is why they're knocking the Saints. In some teams, you're hearing, well, this player could be really good. Ted McMillan, whatever. But then for the Saints, you're hearing a lot of ifs. Well, now they're question marks. They're ifs. But I think the narrative should be pretty similar to those teams. I think Carolina, Atlanta, and the Saints are very similar, all in very similar situations. But two of the teams, people are much quicker to anoint as taking a step, getting better. This could be their year, whatever. With the Saints, they're much quicker to say, no, this team is garbage. And this team is bad. And their first overall pick. I think it's interesting we haven't heard at all some of those other teams could be the worst team in the NFL. I'm not saying they are the worst team in the NFL, but I think it's crazy that we haven't heard once that Carolina could be the worst team in the NFL. I don't know. Haven't heard it at all. But we've heard a lot that the Saints could be. And I don't see that big of a difference between Carolina and the Saints. I really don't. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is all becoming real. It's all this theoretical, all this hypothetical, all of that is slowly becoming real. And we're going to see what happens. First preseason game Sunday. I'll be live streaming it. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, multi-stream. It's all one chat. So, when you're watching the game, why not watch it with the face of the franchise? All right, ladies and gentlemen, get on down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.